All right, guys, I know what I said. I know what I said. I said that I was gonna take a little break from talking EV stocks because I want to talk about more broad things. But honestly, guys, when it comes to my subscribers, if one of you recommends a specific subject, I'm gonna do it because I'm trying to cater to you guys. This whole SPAC reverse merger trend, it's going big. One of you guys wants to hear about a company called ChargePoint. I was like, what is ChargePoint? I was pretty sure I heard about ChargePoint before, and after doing some research on it, I'm pretty interested. It's a little different. What is up, guys? My name is Darren Jackson, and I just remembered on my last video, I never introduced myself and never asked how your day was going. So please feel free to pause this video right now and just leave a comment. Tell me how you're doing, because honestly, how you're doing is more important than any money in the entire world. You gotta have a good mindset before you do anything in life, especially have your money make more money. But I digress. Hopefully you've done that by this point and we can move on. So as I've said, this SPAC reverse merger with other companies has been a huge trend this year. I mean, it's been ridiculous, especially when it comes to EV companies. I'm pretty sure it's led off by the ridiculous volatility and the leadership of Elon Musk and inarguably the largest EV company in the entire world being Tesla. But regardless, it's giving investors like you and myself the opportunity to put money into a company before it even goes public, hoping that it's going to rise and actually, have some historical supports. I'm not gonna name the company that I'm referring to. It's gonna be the only shade I throw at them because we're not talking about them today. So this video, we're gonna be talking about a new merger between a SPAC called Switchback and a EV charging company called ChargePoint Holdings. Yes, I said EV charging, not just EV companies. But just assuming you guys don't know what either one is, like myself, I didn't know at one point, this video breakdown is gonna consist of us talking about what Switchback Energy is, what ChargePoint is, and then obviously we're gonna go into the merger details when it comes to the date and the finances behind it. And then I'm gonna give a little bit of supportive evidence on why this could be a great investment to make, especially when it comes to these reverse mergers. And I'll let you guys know a little bit of my thought process that leads to what I'm currently doing. So with that being said, starting with Switchback Energy, they are a SPAC, or essentially an acquisition company, which I've said many times before, its main goal is to acquire a company that it believes in, that goes with what its ultimate goals are, aside from just making more money. So in between when it IPO'd in 2019 and a few weeks ago, there's not a lot of action going on in it. You're rarely gonna see any action. It looks like, from my personal experience, a few of these SPACs, or all these SPACs as a matter of fact, have ranged between the late 9s and early $10 a share. So that's kind of where they're at. Now, they're led by their CEO, whose name is Scott McNeil. I'm gonna mention that name later, at least I'm gonna try to mention that name later when it comes to a quote. And ever since they IPO'd in 2019, they've raised about $300 million to help support whatever company they decide to acquire. Now, again, their share price stayed at about $9 to $10 a share up until, I believe, September 24th. September 24th, again, that's the date I believe, is the date that they announced their merger with ChargePoint. And at that point, the price went up to at most $16 a share. Now, ChargePoint is a pretty cool company. They operate an infrastructure of charging stations. So all these electric vehicle companies out, they have to charge somewhere. This is where they'll do it, more than likely. They were founded in 2007 by a bunch of different people. If I can find their names and photos, I'm gonna put them up on this video. But they're currently owned and presided by Pascal Romano, who's been the CEO and president since 2011. And I'm gonna try to mention his name later as well, along with Scott McNeil. So as far as charging stations, they have AC charging stations that are gonna work for small workplaces, residences, whether they're multiplexes or individual homes, and fleets of vehicles. And they have DC charging stations, which are gonna be for huge commercial industries, and they're gonna lean more towards fast charging. So that is essentially ChargePoint in a nutshell. Now, going into the merger details, I know the number one question that everyone's asking is, when will this happen? And the answer as of right now is, I'm just kidding. Specifically, it's supposed to happen by the end of this year, basically. They're saying it's supposed to happen by the end of the fourth quarter. So hopefully we're looking at within the last couple of days of this year. At worst, I guess at the beginning of next year, if they experience some type of setback, kind of like Hyliion Motors did, even though they eventually IPO'd. But hopefully not, because we don't want to ruin that momentum. But that's, again, another subject for another day. Now, the breakdown of the finances is supposed to be coming from the shareholders of both ChargePoint and Switchback Energy, a lot of the founders, and from another PIPE investor, which again, it's a way to quickly make more money off your discounted shares. I'm not sure who it's actually coming from. If I can find that out, I'll definitely make a follow-up video along with other information on this merger that's happening. And the valuation of this merger, once it happens, is expected to go up to be $2.4 billion. However, by the time this merger happens, actually even at this point, ChargePoint has raised on their own a little under $700 million. So we're talking a $3 billion valuation by the time this merger happens, which is honestly really cool. And that definitely helps ChargePoint in their expansion process. ChargePoint wants to use about $480 million to help support their continued expansion in North America and in Europe. So having a $3 billion valuation will definitely support that. And when this merger happens, the company will be called ChargePoint Holdings Incorporated, and we really don't know what their ticker symbol is going to be in the New York Stock Exchange, but leave your comments below on what you think it's going to be. I'll shout you out if you're right. I'm guessing it's probably going to be, I don't know, ticker symbol CHAR or CRGE. Who knows, to be honest. But that's pretty much it on the merger details. So it's pretty sound so far. But let's dive more into why I personally feel like you guys should invest in this merger. So let me preface all this information by saying, if you follow my channel for the past at least couple of months, you'll know that I'm pretty new to investing. I've only been investing for a little over a year, at least seriously. So all that to say is, I am not a financial advisor. If you feel like you have any other concerns with investing in companies such as this, definitely get with your financial advisor, especially in situations like this where there's a lot of speculation when it comes to investments. Now, speaking of that, from my history of investing in SPACs and reverse merger related companies, I realize you definitely have to keep a lookout on the history behind it, which sounds pretty stupid, but I'm sure the majority of us kind of got sideswiped by particular companies. I really said that I wasn't going to call them out anymore. It's my bad. The history of this company is one reason why I feel like you guys should invest, or at least highly consider investing in ticker symbol SBE right now, which is Switchback Energy. ChargePoint already has chargers. They already have charging stations and charging points all around the United States. Not only that, but they are the leader of the amount of charge stations. They have the biggest infrastructure of charging stations, even bigger than Tesla in the entire country. I believe they have over 100,000 charging stations within the country, and their stations have been used at a total of 85 million times. That's a lot of charges. That's really awesome. So there's a lot of history behind it. And all in all, their significance when it comes to climate change and reducing greenhouse emissions is pretty significant. They have altogether, since their origin 10 years ago, have saved over 335 metric tons of CO2 gas emissions. So that's really significant, especially in this race to save the world. That was really dramatic, especially within this sector to create a cleaner environment, cleaner air. So they're definitely doing a significant part. They've also been highly recognized. I believe they're actually the first EV company to be handed the Energy Star Award for being energy efficient. So basically they know what they're doing. On top of that, they actually have partners. So they're partnered with companies such as Dell, Facebook, LinkedIn, Target, Whole Foods, which makes sense, Kohl's, et cetera, et cetera. So that means these companies have experience of using their charge stations. And what's also really cool is that ChargePoint not only handles the hardware of their charging stations, but they also operate the software. Software being the app that they have, which allows you to not only find the nearest charge station around you, but to also use it to pay for the charge station to actually operate it and use it, and to know when your charger is ready. And that's really important. That's important because they offer two different types of charging stations, one being an alternating current, which is going to take a little bit longer. So those are beneficial for if you're at work and you have the charging station at your parking garage or your parking lot, you're gonna be in for about 6 to 8 hours. So hopefully by then your car's a little bit more charged than it once was. But we'll get back into that in a little bit. Now, the other reason is their finances. maybe we should say financial potential. So going back to Scott McNeil, remember I said I was gonna bring his name up, who is the CEO of Switchback Energy. He believes, and this is paraphrasing, but basically he believes that considering the amount of electric vehicles that are being made by multiple companies, the projection of electric chargers and their revenue could be upwards of almost $200 billion by 2030. So that's a lot of money going in 10 years. That would be amazing. Pascal Romano pretty much believes the same thing. Of course he would, because he's a CEO of this company. Basically, the potential of EV charging stations is pretty amazing. Now, the expectations of specifically ChargePoint Holdings is that even though they had that loss of about $145 million of 2019, they're expected to meet a revenue of over $2 billion by 2026, which will hopefully be supported by having an infrastructure of at least 2 million charging stations by 2025, which is hopefully something they can build up to with the $400 million, almost $500 million they're using to expand their infrastructure within North America and Europe, as I've said before. But again, this all depends on the future of EVs. And that goes into my personal mindset of it and what I plan on doing and what I've done. So I'm gonna be honest with you guys. When one of my subscribers recommended ChargePoint, I researched it for about 10 minutes and I invested into it. I don't necessarily recommend doing that because there's a little bit of FOMO behind it, especially because it's a SPAC play and you're hoping to get into the next Tesla when it comes to volatility going in your favor. But again, guys, I only invest about $50 a week. So me investing into ChargePoint within minutes of me hearing about it is also me investing about a share and a half at about a $15 cost basis. So I didn't really sacrifice too much. But of course, I took the time to actually research the company and Switchback and the merger within the past couple of days. This is kind of what I'm thinking. So for starters, and I'm gonna just go straight into the downside, or what I thought the downside was, and that's Tesla. So as I've said before, and as we all know, Tesla is the leader of electric vehicles, and that's just with their regular on the road family, or if you're a single man or woman type vehicles, sedans and coupes. And they're also going into Class 8 vehicles, but that's a different category. So with that, they have their own chargers. Even though the infrastructure of ChargePoint is the biggest, Tesla still has their own chargers. And the only reason I bring that up is because that kind of reminds me, and maybe you guys disagree with me on this, again, leave your comments below, let me know, but it kind of reminds me of the comparison between Windows and Mac. So it doesn't really make sense out the gate, but I'm pretty confident that there are a lot of different companies that make computers and laptops that operate off Windows, but there's only one company that operates off iOS. Yet the popularity of iOS is ridiculous. I'm pretty sure that the total amount of revenue that all these companies combined that use Windows makes is higher than Apple. But for one, I mean, what's the difference? It may not be significant. Basically, what I'm trying to say is there's gonna be a lot of people that currently use Tesla vehicles and that will use Tesla vehicles in the future as they continue to build more that will be dedicated to using Tesla chargers. It's like people with Apple iPhones wanting the MacBook and wanting the iPad. They're very dedicated to their company. So that was kind of my original concern, but honestly, I don't think that's going to impact ChargePoint so much. For one, I'm not sure if Tesla will meet the demands that is required based off the infrastructure that's needed, based off how many EVs are out in the world right now. They probably can, but can they do it faster than ChargePoint? The immediate answer looks like no, because ChargePoint's already the biggest EV company ever. Two, the other concern I have is Tesla's price. Now, I don't know what the cost of Tesla chargers are, whether they're the AC or the supercharged DC, but I'm assuming they're gonna be pretty high. They're premium, they have the T symbol on it, so that means something, so they're probably going to sell a little bit higher. And I feel like ChargePoint is aware of that, so I'm pretty sure that their prices on theirs is going to be less. Plus, ChargePoint operates their charging stations, but they don't own them. So that's a lot of money that companies are saving, because I'm assuming Tesla also owns their actual charging stations, which could potentially mean a lot more money that companies are spending to actually have them installed within their businesses, or people to have them installed in their residential homes, whether it's their garage or multiplexes. So actually, I'm not really concerned about that. And more importantly, I feel like this would be an amazing investment for anybody to get into because, again, as I said in the beginning of this video, this has been the biggest year, as far as I know, for reverse mergers that involve electric vehicles. Electric vehicles have been the talk of the town ever since Tesla announced their 5-to-1 stock split, and even before that. Instead of having to choose which electric vehicle company to invest in, believing that they're going to do better than the other one, why not choose the EV charge company that almost every electric vehicle company will need at some point? Because you have to drive these electric vehicles and they have to charge at some point. So you want to be a part of an infrastructure that is readily available and has the option of being able to be charged at a slower rate while you're at work, since our cars sit still longer than they are actually driving, or to be able to have roadside charge stations with direct current charging that can get you on the road within an hour or so, maybe even quicker. The infrastructure they currently have, I feel like, definitely supports the wide range of electric vehicles, which is why I feel like Switchback Energy and ChargePoint is a great play, especially before the merger happens, because we all know the history of SPACs and what happens after the merge happens and that ticker symbol changes. Regardless of the situation, it goes up. And keep in mind, the merger date hasn't even been finalized. There's no specific date. So we also know that once that date happens, it's going to shoot up more. So I do feel like this is at least a good opportunity to put a couple of shares in, whatever you can afford, whether it's one share, half a share. We have fractional shares, but that's why at this point I've invested in, I believe, 3.5 shares of Switchback Energy. I'm kind of doing it to relieve my cost basis, which was at about $15. And I believe today Switchback actually took a drop, so it's at about 14 right now. I'm comfortable with that, so we'll see what happens. But honestly, guys, let me know what you think about this merger with Switchback Energy and ChargePoint, this reverse merger, I'm sorry. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think about this video altogether. And hopefully you check out some of these other videos. I really do hope they help you on your investing journey as I have in mine. I appreciate you guys watching. And until next time, take care.